Let's speak to Chris McEleny, who's the General Secretary of the Alba Party, supporters of independence. Chris, good afternoon to you. I mean, let's start with the last question I put to Michael there. Just give us or talk us around the reasons, the desires, the need for Scottish independence. Nice to have you with us.
Well, it's a philosophical belief that, Scotland is a nation. It's an ancient nation. And in a nation like any other nation, people that choose to live and work here should be able to and allowed to make the decisions about the future, whether that's on public services, whether that's on the political direction of the country. And, I would be totally aghast if, you were making the same argument that people across the UK that identify as the UK as being a nation shouldn't be allowed to make their own decisions, that perhaps, they should be part of some greater European political union that makes all of the political decisions about their future. I don't think that would be acceptable to your listeners and viewers across England, and I don't think it should be acceptable to people across Scotland that we have a...
But of course, we're different, we're different country, though, of course, from European countries, where we're all one country. I mean, these regions called England and Scotland and Wales, etc. But we're the United Kingdom.
But that's the point. Sorry, Ian, but that's the point. They're not regions or nations. England. Yeah, I would like you to ask your listeners to call up and see if they agree with you that England's a region. Of course, it's a nation. Of course, Scotland's a nation. Of course, Wales is a nation. And I believe, and people across Scotland believe, that Scotland is a nation.
Well, yeah, a nation is fine, but in terms of, but not full. We're not full autonomous countries of each other. Obviously, we've got the same head of state, same language, same currency, same cultural references. I mean, the list goes on.
Well, Canada's got the same head of state as the United Kingdom, so I think that's a bit of a moot point.
That's a Commonwealth issue, isn't it?
Plenty of countries across the world use the same.
They haven't got the same Prime Minister.
Well, no, they don't, and that's why we're arguing that we shouldn't have the same Prime Minister, because, let's look at examples over recent history. Scotland was an independent nation. It wouldn't have took part in the illegal war in Iraq. If Scotland was an independent nation, it wouldn't have weapons of mass destruction housed on the River Clyde. And if Scotland was an independent nation, £80 billion wouldn't be siphoned off of the North Sea over the next 6 years to fix the black hole that Westminster caused.
Yes.
That would be invested in Scotland.
And you wouldn't be the beneficiaries of the system that disproportionately favours money going to Scotland, free universities, free prescriptions, and all that. I mean, you could play that game all day long. I'm interested, Chris, on why you actually. I mean, why you do? I mean, we all know Scotland financially, economically, could never survive on its own. I mean, it's a ridiculous idea that could happen. You know that in your heart, don't you?
90% of the oil that comes out of the North Sea comes from Scottish waters, and that's what's bailing out the UK government right now.
The United Kingdom oil, are you talking about?
£80 billion of tax revenue is coming from the North Sea to fix the ridiculous...
So is this going to be the way forward? You're going to be an oil-producing nation while championing net zero at the same time. How's that going to work?
Well, I think, that sensible people, and hopefully you're one of them...
Well, it won't, is the answer you're looking for.
There is an energy mix. We have an abundance of natural resources.
Well, 80 billion quid's worth. That's not a mix. That's a dominant energy policy you're looking at there.
Well, I think you perhaps not read the information on this. That's the tax revenues we get from the North Sea. We have an abundance of offshore wind. We have an abundance of tidal potential. And we're bounty from the North Sea, which has been siphoned off by Westminster for, the last 50 years. That should help power the next...
When you say siphoned off, that's because we're the same country. That's like somebody in Kent arguing the same thing about their solar panels or any other industry.
Well, it's not really, to a similar extent. This argument does happen in England. I'm sure you've got many listeners in the north of England that will argue that too often decisions in Westminster, invest funds...
But that could go on forever. I remember when Scotland first... When Holyrood first opened, I remember this, Chris, I took a call from a woman in Stirling who rang me, and I said, are you not pleased that Scotland finally have this parliament? And she said, what on earth do they know down there in Edinburgh, what's going on here in Scotland? So, I mean, those arguments can carry on forever. It's an anti-English position, ultimately, Chris, isn't it? Just a final word on this, sir.
No, you're just being really silly now, Ian. I don't think, anyone agrees with that. One thing we can agree on is you won't get a vote in any referendum if there is one, because you don't live in Scotland.
Yeah.
And whether
even a Scot wouldn't get a vote. Even a Scot wouldn't get a vote in it if they didn't live in Scotland.
Well, quite right. That's how that's how elections should work.
Well, people they don't all work like that, of course.
Well, how far do you want to start? From a local government.
Well, there you go. Listen, on that,
people that live in areas make decisions, and that's how it should work in Scotland. You might think it's it's a ridiculous notion, but that's because you're just regurgitating lines from unionist politicians.
No, I'm regurgitating lines from somebody who thinks the United Kingdom actually rubs along rather well for all the kind of troubles and trials and tribulations we go through. I cannot intellectually, genuinely, Chris, see an intelligent, salient reason for any part of the UK, in this case Scotland, to go it alone.
Have you been watching the news the last 2 or 3 months?
Yeah, I work in a newsroom, so I get quite a lot of that stuff.
So you're pretty sure you'll be aware of the absolute chaos that the Westminster establishment's in.
Oh, it's just in Westminster, is it? I mean, come on, this is guff now that you're running. It's all down to Westminster. Everything's perfect in Holyrood. Come on, man.
Well, I'll tell you what, the UK is the democratic laughing stock of the world. You can't say that.
You think so? Who told you that? Where did you get that from?
Where did I get it? Well,
you just made it up, didn't you?
No, unlike you,
you just wheeled out a line.
It's
quite witty, it's quite funny, but it doesn't come from anywhere.
Well, it's accurate. We're no longer in the EU. We're ostracised. We're not included in any of the. We're no longer at the table. We're now on the menu. That's the reality of the legacy of Brexit.
Right. Take a look at what trade is doing at the moment between the EU and the United Kingdom. Take a look at growth figures between this country and Germany. Take a look at the size of the black hole in Italy and France compared to the United Kingdom. You don't know these figures, Chris, do you?
Let's take a look at growth figures. The UK is the worst performing country in the G7.
And predicted to be the best in the next year.
Predicted to be the best, yes.
Well, by the very same measure that you're citing here.
No, I'm citing the argument of self-determination, that people that live in a country should be allowed to make their own decisions.
Okay.
And whether those are good decisions or bad decisions.
And if you lived in a separate country, that would maybe be the case. Chris, thank you. Chris McEleny, who's the General Secretary of the Alba Party. I think they go slightly further than the SNP.